So the other morning, I was sitting at a cafe just watching people, and I noticed this one woman a few tables over. She had everything set up perfectly. You know, this beautiful leather journal, a brand new laptop. She looked like the personification of momentum.
Right, the person who has it all together.
Exactly. She had this air about her, like, today is the day. This is when it all changes. But then for the next, 45 minutes, I watched her do everything except work.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Yeah. She'd adjust her posture. She reorganized her pens, like by color, checked the time every few minutes, scrolled on her phone with this look of almost painful concentration.
It wasn't laziness.
No, not at all. That's what was so fascinating. It was like she was a hostage. Every time her hand would kind of hover over the keyboard, you could just see her whole body tighten up.
And then retreat.
Immediately. Back to a safe ritual. Wiping a smudge off the screen, checking her email for the 10th time. It was this quiet, totally invisible drama.
A conflict.
A huge conflict. From the outside, just a woman with a coffee. But if you look closer, you could see the friction. One version of her was just desperate to create something, to risk it.
And the other version?
The other version was this incredibly efficient, very practiced part of her that was working overtime to make sure absolutely nothing changed. It was like a perfectly executed defense mission.
That little moment, that shift from ready to act to paralyzed by ritual, that's what we're doing a deep dive on today.
It's the core tension, isn't it? We think we're one person, a single, cohesive me, but the reality is it's a lot more crowded in here.
It is. There's a small, persistent war happening inside all of us, all the time. Two versions of you sharing one nervous system, and they disagree on almost everything.
One is all about safety, keeping things comfortable, known.
And the other is restless, curious, and frankly, deeply embarrassed about not being who it knows it could be.
The life you end up living, it doesn't really depend on your goals or your talent. It depends on which of those two housemates, I guess, you decide to listen to.
And that tension is where we're going today. We're going to dissect this foundational dilemma of human behavior, the version of us dedicated to safety versus the version that just yearns for growth and risk.
And this isn't just, some self-help idea. You're saying this is baked into our biology.
It's biological, it's neurological, and it's even reinforced by the way we think about economics. It's everywhere.
So let's start there, at the biological root. You called it an evolutionary mismatch. When I saw that woman in the cafe, the safety-seeking self was just so dominant, so efficient. Why does that part of us have such a massive head start?
Because the whole system, the human organism, is designed first and foremost for survival, not for fulfillment, not for happiness.
Survival.
And our modern goals, like writing a book or starting a business,
they often clash violently with these deeply ingrained ancient survival mechanisms we're all still carrying around. The brain's default, its number one priority, is always, always risk aversion and metabolic conservation.
So saving energy. Saving energy. We're basically operating with a threat level of the savannah, even when we're sitting in a perfectly safe cafe with a latte.
That makes so much sense. To our core operating system, energy is the most precious resource there is.
Absolutely. Every single action that isn't essential for survival is viewed with, a deep suspicion by your brain. Your body's prime directive is to conserve calories for a potential crisis, fleeing a predator, finding food.
So launching a risky new project is seen as a ridiculous waste of fuel.
It's seen as a terrible investment. The brain favors saving that energy over pursuing some long-term abstract status-enhancing goal that might come from, taking a big professional leap.
So the do not waste calories mandate is basically the most powerful manager in our internal company.
It's the CEO, the CFO, and the head of security all rolled into one.
And the part of me that wants to start some massive, complex project is fighting against a version whose only job is to say, don't die and don't waste fuel on things that aren't immediately necessary.
It creates this tremendous gravitational pull toward the status quo, because the status quo is known. It has a low, predictable energy cost.
And a new, big, open-ended task.
That requires a massive cognitive effort, which, for the brain, translates directly into a massive metabolic cost. Your brain is essentially asking, is writing this chapter worth the calories I could be saving for a real emergency? And most of the time, that ancient mechanism answers with a very loud no.
So the safety self is efficient because it's running on this one simple ancient algorithm.
That's right. And the growth self is trying to convince this ancient system that a distant future gain is worth a very real, very immediate cost. And that is a very, very hard sell. Now, let's take that biological conflict and see how economists look at it. They came up with this really influential framework called the Planner-Doer Economic Model.
Right. I was reading about this, and it really formalizes that internal argument we all have. But in terms of like maximizing outcomes, can you break down who these two lists?
Yeah. So first, you have the farsighted planner. Think of the planner as your inner retirement advisor, your long-term health coach. It's the part of you that is concerned with maximizing your lifetime utility.
So it's looking at the big picture.
The biggest picture possible. The planner wants you to retire comfortably, to be healthy in 30 years, to finish that degree. It understands compound interest, both financially and, emotionally.
And then there's the antagonist, the myopic doer. If the planner is the CEO, the doer is the impulsive intern who only cares about what's for lunch.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
The doer is completely short-sighted. It only cares about maximizing current, immediate utility.
The next 5 minutes.
Exactly. His whole world is the next 5 minutes. Immediate satisfaction, immediate avoidance of pain, immediate gratification. Hitting the snooze button, eating the cake, scrolling on your phone instead of starting the work. That's the doer's entire playbook.
So the whole conflict is the planner, with these grand long-term plans just desperately trying to control this impulsive doer. But why does the doer seem to win so many of the small, critical battles? If the planner is so smart, why can't it just lay down the law?
Because the doer has a massive advantage. It operates with a powerful temporal weapon, which brings us to a critical concept called hyperbolic discounting.
Okay, hyperbolic discounting. That sounds a bit academic.
It does, but the idea is simple. It just means we have time-inconsistent preferences.
Meaning we're just terrible at predicting what our future self will actually want or do.
It's more about how we judge value. In a purely rational world, the value of a reward, say $100, should decrease steadily over time. But we humans, we don't do that. We discount the value of future rewards disproportionately steeply when the decision involves right now versus the near future.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. If I offer you a choice,
Yeah.
$100 today or $110 tomorrow, what do you take?
The $100 today? Almost certainly.
Right. But what if I offer you $100 in a year or $110 in a year in one day?
Oh, well, then I'll take the 110. The extra day doesn't matter a year from now.
Exactly. The huge, steep drop in perceived value only happens when the present moment is one of the options.
The present acts like a magnifying glass for immediate costs and benefits.
A massive magnifying glass. And this is why hyperbolic discounting explains almost all procrastination. The cost, whether it's effort or abstinence from something or discomfort, is felt immediately. It's right here, magnified.
But the reward, better health, a finished book, financial security, is distant, it's abstract, and its value has been steeply, steeply discounted.
Let's use exercise as an example. The planner knows that working out for a year leads to huge health gains, high lifetime utility.
My curse.
But every single morning, the doer is faced with the immediate visceral costs. The cold floor, the effort, the sore muscles, losing 30 minutes of sleep. And because that discomfort is now, it almost always outweighs the massive but distant gain. So you skip the workout. Again.
Or with work. I know I should spend a few hours learning some new difficult skill that will pay off hugely in a year.
Right.
But right now, I could just clear my inbox, which is easy, known, low risk, and it gives me a tiny immediate hit of accomplishment.
Now that tiny immediate hit often defeats the massive discounted future payoff. The doer is an expert at exploiting that gap.
So the planner has to use willpower to fight back.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Willpower is a finite resource. It's exhausting. Self-control isn't a switch you can just flip on. It's an effortful, costly process that we can't sustain forever.
Okay, so the economic model explains the incentive problem, the math, but there's also the fear problem, the woman in the cafe, her avoidance. It felt less like a calculation and more like a defensive crouch. It wasn't laziness, it felt like a perceived threat.
And that connects us right back to the neurology we started with. The research on this is very clear. The brain's primal fear center, the amygdala, it treats new challenges as immediate potential threats.
Even if they're not physical threats.
Even if they're not physical, it doesn't matter.
So how does the amygdala make that leap? How does starting a difficult conversation register as danger?
Because the amygdala has a very simple rule. Familiarity equals safety. Uncertainty equals danger. The second you step outside your known routine, you introduce uncertainty.
Even if the routine is miserable.
Even if the routine is a toxic job or a bad relationship, it's a known misery. Uncertainty to the ancient brain demands high alert status. It activates the threat detection systems. The risk of an uncertain outcome like rejection or failure or just social discomfort gets equated with a physical threat.
So the brain prefers the known pain over the unknown risk.
Every single time. Even if that known pain is crushing you in the long run.
It's fascinating because we all talk about the comfort zone as if it's this wonderful, happy place, but you're suggesting it's actually a neurological trap.
It is deeply misleading. The comfort zone is really just the zone of minimum required effort. And the research shows that people who are operating in what you call moderate discomfort.
Meaning they're learning something, stretching themselves.
Exactly. They're engaged in challenging but achievable tasks. Those people report significantly higher life satisfaction than people who are just coasting.
Why is that? Why does too much comfort lead to anxiety and even depression?
It has to do with dopamine. Dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical. It's the neurotransmitter of seeking and anticipation. When your environment becomes too predictable, there's nothing to seek. The dopamine system just flatlines.
So your brain gets bored.
Profoundly bored. And that boredom often manifests as this generalized anxiety or restlessness. It's your brain basically screaming, if this isn't working, we need novelty, we need a challenge.
So the choice isn't really between safe boredom and risky excitement. It's more like a choice between the safe, predictable anxiety that comes from inaction and the challenging, fulfilling discomfort that comes from growth.
That's a great way to put it.
So what's the ultimate price we pay if we consistently let the safety-seeking self win?
The cost of inaction is immense. Neurologically, every time you avoid that difficult task, you are reinforcing the neural pathway that says, this is dangerous. It hardens that avoidance into an automatic default response.
And your skills start to atrophy.
Exactly. The emotional, social, and professional skills you need to navigate life just waste away. It's like a muscle you never use. And eventually, even small future challenges start to feel completely impossible.
And this leads to the biggest emotional cost of all, regret.
The pain of inaction is far more pervasive and debilitating than the pain of failure. We fear failing, the embarrassment, but the data on this is overwhelming.
Let's talk about the magnitude here because it's staggering.
It really is. The vast majority of major life regrets are about the things you didn't do, not the things you tried and failed at. Studies show that a massive 80% of major regrets in life are rooted in inaction.
They call it the if-only effect.
That's right. If you launch a business and it fails, your regret is usually manageable. I regret I lost money, but I learned a lot. It's a coherent story, a chapter.
But the if-only regret?
It's a ghost. If only I had told that person how I felt. If only I'd taken that trip. If only I'd spoken up. You're left haunted by the potential self you could have been. The safety self successfully protected you from immediate discomfort, but it sentenced your future self to a profound, chronic emotional pain.
It's like taking out a psychological loan with an insane interest rate.
That's it, exactly. And this fragmentation, this division between who you are and who you know you could be, it can go beyond a productivity problem. It can become a full-blown identity crisis.
Which moves us into the clinical side of things, where this internal conflict isn't just a minor struggle, it's a profound split in the self.
Yes, and we can see this incredibly clearly in qualitative data from people dealing with chronic conditions, where this division is undeniable.
Let's start with the experiences of chronic pain sufferers. I was reading the narratives, and the internal split is defined in almost literal terms.
It is. Participants in these studies frequently talk about two separate selves. There's the self with pain, their current limited identity, and then there's the real me.
The real me being the person they were before the pain. The capable, functional self that they feel is now trapped.
It is such a heartbreaking distinction. It sets up a state of constant psychological warfare. They describe this uneasy, continuous conflict. One person put it as their mind saying, yes, carry on, while their body was screaming, no.
That's the Planner-Doer model, but manifested as this agonizing physical struggle. The mind holds the goals of the old pain-free self, while the body is forcing this immediate, painful reality.
Right, and the consequences of that internal war are these maladaptive behaviors.
What does that mean in practice?
It means they push themselves past their physical limits. They overextend themselves socially. They insist on doing strenuous things, all in a desperate attempt to prove to themselves and others that they are still themselves.
That's a painful irony. The fight to preserve the old identity actually makes the physical symptoms worse. It deepens the hold of the self with pain.
They're locked in this zero-sum game against their own bodies. And sometimes this fight gets projected onto external symbols. There's a powerful example of a participant who refused to use a wheelchair.
Even though it would have improved her mobility.
Yes, because to her, the wheelchair was a symbol of the pain's domain. Using it felt like surrender. Refusing it was a purely psychological battle, a refusal to be taken over by her limitations.
So she chose physical suffering to preserve a sense of internal autonomy.
She did, and it just shows the profound lengths we'll go to maintain a unified story about ourselves, even when it involves clear self-sabotage.
If chronic pain shows this stark division, the research on addiction shows how this conflict can completely unravel a person's life story.
Yes, the study of narrative identity here is crucial. Our narrative identity it's a story we tell ourselves about ourselves to make sense of our lives.
And in addiction, that story falls apart.
It becomes fragmented, disorganized. You can literally see the internal chaos reflected in the structural quality of their personal life stories.
So how do researchers measure that? What are they looking for in the way people talk about their lives?
They analyze the stories for something called global coherence. It's the ability to organize your life events into a unified, meaningful story. To establish clear, causal links, this happened, which led to that, and thematic links.
So low global coherence means your life story is just a jumbled mess of scenes with no clear plot or character motivation.
That's a perfect way to put it. And people with addictive disorders show profoundly low global coherence. They struggle to explain why things happened, what motivated them, and how different parts of their life connect. They can't tell a unified story about themselves.
And that's not just a memory problem. It reflects something deeper.
Much deeper. It reflects an underlying problem in their cognitive and emotional processes, especially around craving. When they describe moments of intense craving, their stories become particularly incoherent. It's almost like a dissociative state, a disconnection from the selves at that core moment. The doer takes over so completely that the planner literally cannot integrate the event into the life story later.
So the structure is a mess. What about the themes? What do their stories say about their sense of control?
When you analyze the narratives for themes of agency, you find an overwhelming prevalence of passivity, a profound lack of self-determination.
So agency is the sense that you're in the driver's seat of your own life.
Right. It's self-efficacy, the belief that you can make things happen, and their stories are devoid of it. It's not, I decided to do this. It's, this happened to me. They see themselves as passive actors in their own lives, especially around the addiction.
That's the disorganized self right there. And you mentioned a fascinating linguistic finding related to time.
Yes, the phenomenon of temporal stuckness. When researchers analyzed their language, they found a marked absence of self-projection into the future.
They don't use the future tense.
Very, very rarely. Their linguistic self just fails to connect their current experience with any achievable future self outside of the addiction. They are trapped in the immediate present.
Because the planner has just given up. Why budget for a future when the only certainty is the immediate cycle of craving and satisfaction?
The doer has won a total victory. The future reward is discounted to zero, so why even talk about it? The entire identity shrinks down to a present moment that is perpetually at war with itself.
Okay, so if the problem is this internal war, the planner hijacked by the doer, all reinforced by this primal fear response, then the solution has to be about integration.
Exactly.
We need tools for the planner to get some control back, and we need strategies to calm the nervous system down, to stop it from screaming threat at every turn.
Absolutely. And we can start with the strategic tools the planner can use to constrain the doer. These are called commitment devices.
This is where we use our rational, calm self to outsmart our future impulsive self.
That's it. You're pre-committing to a course of action. You impose self-imposed rules or commitment technologies to limit what the doer is allowed to do in the moment of temptation.
So give me some real-world examples of these.
Well, a classic financial one was the old Christmas Club savings accounts. You'd commit to saving a certain amount every month, and there were penalties if you tried to withdraw it early.
So you're using bureaucracy to fight your own impulses.
You are. Today it looks more like automatically enrolling in a 401k or setting up recurring transfers to an account that's hard to access.
And there are more extreme chemical versions, too.
Yes. A prime clinical example is Antabuse for treating alcoholism. If you drink while on it, you get violently ill. So the far-sighted planner, when sober, takes the pill, knowing it will make the cost of drinking for the doer immediate and terrible.
It changes the calculation from some hazy future liver damage to guaranteed immediate misery.
Exactly. But I think the most relatable one we can all use is a psychological tool called mental accounting.
Right. This is where you create separate mental budgets for things.
It's a powerful self-imposed commitment device. Even though we know that a dollar is a dollar, we create these psychological quarantine zones. This is rent money, this is vacation money, this is grocery money.
And that actually stops the doer from spending it, even though the money is technically available.
It does. Because to spend the rent money on a frivolous purchase feels like a violation of a self-imposed contract. The labels create friction. The planner succeeds by changing the perception of the resource instead of fighting a losing battle of pure willpower.
Okay, so that helps with the impulse control. But what about the fear response? The amygdala that's always on high alert. We need a way to dial that down.
And for that, we need a behavioral approach. We need incremental recalibration. The goal is to integrate the two selves through tiny, calculated microactions that are designed to not trigger a full-scale defensive meltdown.
We're basically retraining the brain one tiny step at a time that the world isn't out to get it. How small are we talking?
We're talking about adhering to the 5% rule.
The 5% rule.
The idea is to initiate an action that is only about 5% uncomfortable. It has to be noticeable enough that you feel a little tension, but so manageable that the chance of paralyzing fear is almost zero.
Okay, so let's use the example of the avoided email. The full-scale discomfort is writing the whole thing. What's the 5% action?
The 5% action might just be opening a new draft and writing the subject line. That's it. Then you walk away. Or, if you need to speak up in a meeting, the 5% action is contributing one single, small, well-prepared sentence, not leading the whole discussion.
And the beauty of this is that it's all about small, achievable wins. Why is that so important?
Because every small win directly boosts your self-efficacy.
The belief that you can actually do things.
Exactly. Every successful 5% micro-action sends a powerful message back to your brain. That was a little challenging, but I did it, and I survived. That feedback loop starts to rebuild your sense of agency, which is the very thing that was missing in those fragmented life stories.
And what about when you feel that physical anxiety kicking in? The heart racing, the clammy hands. There's a cognitive trick for that, right?
There is a brilliant one. The physical symptoms of fear and excitement are exactly the same. Increased heart rate, adrenaline, heightened alertness.
So you can relabel the feeling.
You can intentionally reframe it. Instead of interpreting that physical arousal as a signal to panic and retreat, you consciously adopt a new mantra. I'm not nervous, I'm energized. You trick your brain into turning a threat signal into motivational fuel.
And finally, to keep those skills from getting rusty, you have to be proactive.
That's the final step. You have to start scheduling discomfort. Deliberately block out time in your calendar for challenging things. Making that difficult call. Trying a new skill, going to a networking event. It ensures the growth-oriented self gets its time, moving you from a passive state of avoidance to one of active self-determination.
So these are the strategies for the immediate battles. But the deepest shift, the one that leads to true integration, that comes from looking at those who face the most chronic struggles.
Yes. That final profound shift we saw in the studies of chronic pain sufferers. They moved beyond the struggle to a place of acceptance. And it's so important to define acceptance correctly here.
It's not giving up.
It is not giving up. It's not passive resignation. Acceptance is an active, conscious process. It's about willfully letting go of the past self, that real me that no longer exists, and recognizing that the perpetual struggle against reality is futile.
They realized that a huge part of their suffering wasn't the pain itself, but the fight against the pain.
The fight was the primary source of exhaustion. And once they stopped fighting, this profound attitudinal shift could happen.
They went from seeing their pain as a meaningless enemy
to seeing it as a vehicle for growth, or, astonishingly, as a companion. They reframed the source of their conflict into a source of information.
A companion. That's an incredible pivot.
It is. One participant talked about how she'd acknowledge her pain every morning, literally give it a little lecture, and then shift her focus. She treated it like an attention-seeking person that needed to be managed, but not obeyed.
It gave her agency over her focus, even if not over the sensation.
Yes. And others reframed it as a teacher. As one person reflected, the pain had become so integrated that I think it would feel really weird to wake up and not feel any pain. I think I would think I was dead. The enemy had become part of the self's definition.
This shift must have given them an incredible clarity about what was actually important in their lives.
It forced them into a rigorous self-reflection. prioritization and necessity. They talked about how they stopped being run ragged by the 100 demands of their old lives and started focusing only on the 10 things that were true necessities, their core values.
So the limitation became a source of focus.
A profound source of focus. One person said, "Do I have to ride a bicycle?" No. It's things that I feel I have to do that I do. It improved your quality of life because it forced them into a strict, authentic adherence to what truly mattered.
And this brings us right back around to the idea of the life story. If addiction fragmented the story, this process must restore it.
Exactly. This is the goal of narrative therapy, to help the individual find the causal links between their past suffering, their current acceptance, and their new prioritized path forward. It reintegrates those dissociated parts of the self.
The integrated self doesn't deny the limitations, but it owns the plot moving forward. The planner and the doer are no longer at war. They've just accepted the new map.
The result is a renewed sense of agency. One participant called it choosing a different path, a gentler path, but one that represented conscious, onward movement. The war ends when the two selves finally accept the same reality and start working toward the same prioritized future.
The conflict between the part of you that keeps you safe and the part that drives you forward, it's fundamental. It's never going to go away entirely. But the power isn't in trying to kill off the safety-seeking self. It's in the conscious, continuous commitment to those small, forward-moving actions.
The 5% rule, the commitment devices, the active acceptance.
Those are the things that redefine your identity and ultimately integrate your dual selves into one cohesive, effective agent in your own life.
The path to an integrated life isn't about defeating a part of yourself. It's about accepting the necessary limitations of your present moment and then using those very constraints to discover a depth of purpose and focus that your comfortable previous self never even knew was possible.